Right. Can you hear me and see my slide, Walid?
Yes, you were just muted for a moment, so.
Yeah. Wonderful. Just optimizing my setup here.
Okay,
So,
cool.
all right. So now I can start. So welcome everybody. My name is Mario Kunz. I will walk you through a couple of digital agriculture solutions in the next 45 minutes, I believe. And here is my kind of content I want to share with you. So a little bit about me, very short and briefly. Then I have made my kind of presentation into two parts. One is kind of a very important one when we as Sixth Grain create digital solutions, understanding the client as obvious. And I have some examples on how we usually drill to that. And then I wanted to make the presentation a bit more interactive. So I will actually make live demos of three solutions of what I would call kind of business intelligence tools we have developed or are about to develop with some interesting clients. One is around crop mapping, which Molly already talked a little bit about. We just had a question about accuracy, and I'm happy to jump on that as well a little bit. Then business potential toolkit. So how to sell more or how to de-risk more if you're kind of in finance or banking. And then finally, also, as already mentioned, data capturing. So yes, we have the wonderful satellites up in the air, but what we need is what I would call calibration data. And that's something we cannot shy away from. And also this plus other data, we have a little bit of toolkit to make this a digital and speed up the process of that. And that may can also help and get you some ideas on what we can do with you. So as for me, 53 year, I'm having two challenging teenage kids based in Germany. I have an information science background, so I have no agronomy background. I have no kind of remote sensing background. But what I can really do is I can understand zeros and ones. And this helps me a lot to come to my last point on this slide. I spent 10 years in very classical IT roles, a decade there. This also helps me to understand how to design systems from a back end and as well from a front end side. So it was a quite good training in how to service this properly to a client. Then I switched kind of roles and I spent about 10 years in business development in Africa and Middle East. And this kind of grounded me in the sense of what the hell is going on in the world compared to my first world here in Germany. So really grateful for that experience. But also it helped me how to design really kind of digital business solutions that are fit for purpose in smallholder markets, but as well for professional farmers, and including the CRM parts of that. And then a couple of years I spent in a sustainability department. Smallholder development goals where there are climate smart kind of stuff. I take care. I spent a lot of time in CO2 reduction, which was also quite interesting. So that also kind of complemented my kind of view on how we should design things for our clients. As of now, I am, if you really would like to call me a role, I call myself a chief product owner. But at the end of the day, as I have no agronomy part, but I have a kind of an information science background, and I have not a science background like Molly, but where I'm good at is bridging these two worlds. So I can talk both languages to extend everybody understands me, and then I can take this into account and build a fit for purpose solution. So this is my value add at Sixth Grain and value add to you as a client. Right. Understanding a client and the needs. Very, very important. So there are three successful steps to a partnership and a very good implementation when we are building solutions for customers. And we don't, at Sixth Grain, we don't have off-the-shelves products to say, in your case, you take product A and product B. We have more than, let's say, digital call it modules, which we can intersect with each other, or it's like a potpourri of solutions, which then we tailor towards the needs of our clients. So what we first need to do is we need to listen to the client. And that is a very important step I usually do, understanding the pain points of your customer. Understanding also the pain points of the client's client, because we don't sell typically directly our products to an end farmer. We sell it to a bank, to an insurance company, to a commercial company, input companies, these kind of things. But understanding what is really the root cause we want to address here, because with all of these digital solutions, you have a myriad of options to take from, and sometimes it's actually too much. So focus and understanding the pain points. Start small is also what I usually tell the people when we are starting a solution, because everybody gets excited. Oh, we can do this, this, and this. I said, no. Focus on your kind of main pain points, 3 or 5 of them. Try to address them. Start to implement it, and then enhance. And also in my kind of experience when I talk to new clients, we shouldn't scare them with technical jargon. I mean, unless they demand for it, as I've written here, sometimes you have really deep down agronomists who would like to understand a very bit, then it's absolutely fine. But typically it's kind of listen and explain as easy as possible when you have understand what the pain points are. And also understanding budget constraints. I mean, it is secondary a little bit, but still important. As Molly mentioned before, I mean, if we want to map an entire country with Sentinel-2 data, now I'm getting a bit technical, this has a 10-meter resolution. You have gigabytes and gigabytes of data to process in perhaps an Amazon cloud high-performance computing, which you have to hire. And Vladimir, our CEO, gets then crazy about cloud costs. So easily solutions like this can have whatever $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 worth of cost on a monthly basis in the Amazon cloud. Hence, the solution to the client will then be 20K, 30K if we add all our efforts on top of that. So it's not just that we can solve all of the problems. The question then becomes is it viable? I mean, can we do something with it? And that's an important point. So that's my kind of first thing to summarize in terms of the pain points and the constraints. And then what I typically do is, as I said earlier already, focus, focus, and focus. We pick the top 3 or 5, and then we try to describe the need for each of these requirements of the potential solution. And this can be non-technical speech. We would like to address, take an example of a bank who would like to issue a loan, and they have an issue with it takes too long until the loan is kind of being approved. So that's what we want to do. And then we describe that solution and say, okay, for this, we could inject this module, this module, and this module. It will deliver a faster turnaround time here by going digitally with an app or a tablet. It will have more kind of argumented information, therefore the decision-making process can be faster. And then we have described these things. And then depending on the first bullet point, like the initial listening, saying, okay, there might be a fit gap list to say, we actually don't have yet a module which could address this, but I haven't actually found anything where I described which Molly and her team can actually create a solution with. So it's always amazes me if I say I have this kind of business problem, could we do something? They come up with another kind of source of satellite or any other kind of data, argument, modeling, artificial intelligence. I mean, we are really have a myriad of tools which we could inject to address problems. So that is it. Also, what I do typically is I create client profiles, especially kind of if it's a kind of a bigger customer, and because this can help to describe situations and the client better. And I have 2-3 examples with that. in a second in the slide deck. And then the third one is you have this digesting all of that above, then you create your target offer. So a user journey. The top 3 points, that's what we want to start with. This is how we could enhance over time. And then also very important, and Pete probably will tell this from a customer perspective later, also the business models. We not have a standard out of the box. You pay a license of $X and then that's it. You can use it. No, we typically try to work with our customers and come up with a solution which creates a win-win. Could be a pay-per-use, we pay per hectare, we issue a license, of course, or we make a full transition, like what we do, for example, with the government of Rwanda at the moment, where we fully inject and hand over the entire toolkit, including the license and the IP. So they are free to use it in the way they want afterwards, with the capacity building. So we train the people how to use our tools, which is a very good model to my mind. Or a shared revenue could also be possible. One note, of course, for simplification, I have ignored the contractual setup here. I mean, that is then also quite a task to do, but these are the 3 steps I usually do. In terms of user journey, here is something which I typically kind of do, and that would be an example of a client. So this guy in the smallholder market, he wants to feed his family. How old is he? But you see here, what are his pain points? So when I talk to our client, in this case, let's say it's an insurance company, and they say we would like to insure 1,000 people in these 2 provinces with a climate smart solution where we can help them to address this. What are really the farmers' pain points? What do we want to address? Can they afford it? Do we need to make it cheaper? Or what's the kind of the things? So, and that typically helps to stimulate a discussion saying, okay, if these are the pain points and the needs of these guys, this is how we should design our solutions that are fit for purpose. And you see here, I mean, what I typically go when you go into rural areas, there are no smartphones anymore. I mean, there are feature phones only. So if we want to interact with these guys, an app doesn't help. So it needs to be SMS or radio or any other kind of channel. But an app would not help. Where my experience when I was working in the sustainability area in Indonesia and in India and in Thailand, there with the farmers, smartphone penetration is not an issue at all. So here you could set up a complete different solution with the same fit for purpose. So this is what I typically do and say, hey, is this really addressing what we want to solve here? So that's a farmer view. Here I have made up an artificial bank, an agri-bank. I mean, what do they want? I mean, yes, we would like to have as few as possible bad debts because this is how we can optimize our profit. So that's the kind of things what they're after. So what would be a pain point from a bank? It could be cost incentive loan application interviews. So they need to have a lot of staff to go out in the field, which also takes a long time until they come back. They are running into bad debts after season, so farmers cannot pay them back, which actually then leads into a high premium cost of a product, and that makes it then unattractive. And then you have a self-fulfilling prophecy that this kind of things doesn't pick up. And understanding these pains and these needs, let's say from this client, which is a bank perspective, will help in the dialogue with the customer to build these solutions. The next thing is another lens. It's a bit the same, but we need to think about when do we want to interact with our clients, e.g. the farmers at the end of the day. And you have 6 kind of stages here. It's before the planting, so when they prepare and they plan what to plant, how to plant, and these kind of things. Then there is a phase of input procurement, potentially. Then the planting, the start of the season phase, the maintenance when the things are growing, harvesting, and then post-harvest, which is even with storage and then selling. Each of these phases have different demands. So we need to be very clear from 6th grain with our client, where do we want to play? What do we want to address? And I've highlighted here a couple of things. I mean, this lady here, she wanted to procure inputs, but she can't afford them. So perhaps the best way here is to work with a microfinance, where I have some real demo on how we have a solution that could probably fit in this area. The lady would like to have kind of weather and climate forecasts, advice, also a thing which is needed. Did he have the right product? What are the regulatory perspectives? And here on the bottom, I have the pain points kind of written out. So is our solution fitting to our clients plus fitting to the client's client? And do we create a benefit? And this is what I always have in my mind when I start to talk to and kind of designing solutions. All right, so that was a bit of a boring, or hopefully not boring, background. And now I'm over into 3 demos I want to show. One is around our crop mapping, where Molly already showed a little bit. I have kind of three things I want to show here. Then a business potential toolkit. So how can I identify, for example, new customers with 6th grain solutions? De-risking, I already introduced here, and kind of simplifying business tasks by integrating it into any kind of CRM solution. That can also help if you're kind of a bit of a bigger company. And then last thing, and I cannot stress enough, which is ground truthing. So ever since in almost any project, we need some sorts of data. So we have a very simple and effective digital capturing tool with some near real-time visualization I want to show you as well. Okay, so let me start with the crop mapping then. Give me a second to share another screen. Here we go. Okay. All right. So crop mapping in its simplest way, and you see we have a lots of experience here in Africa, is telling you where is a certain crop grown. This goes down to, with Sentinel-2 data, down to 10-meter accuracy. And the first interesting part here is, and I'll stay with Zimbabwe here as an example. If I zoom in, at a certain resolution, you will see here on the, oh, there was one too much. Let me go one step back. At a certain resolution, the segmentation kicks in. And this is what I have found very interesting for quite a lot of our customers. So we have the ability by, let's say, analyzing the size of individual fields, how much in terms of user segmentation is being grown in a certain area. And I can remove medium and small for a second. And then you see this kind of purple here is where kind of what I would consider professional farming is going on. So how is that being used? I have already prepared something in the background. And my mantra ever since is data to insights to action. So what I showed you before is nice. Okay, now we know where maize is grown, but maybe quite a lot of people already knew, maybe not to the extent and details we have here, but they already had an understanding. When an insight comes is with one client, they had an input provider company. They had a GPS locations of what they would call demo plots. So this is where they generate examples of how good their kind of product is. So this was a certain maize seed, and they said, next to the road, 10 by 10 meter kind of demo plot, where they invite typically farmers in the neighborhood and saying, hey, if you grow our kind of products using our seed and our products, this is how good a maize can look like. Now I had GPS points, and from 6th grade we had the ability to say, where is maize grown? And then the interesting part starts here. If I zoom in one more time, you will see the black dots is where the products are sold. And that means here, there is a lot of maize grown. So we have retailers who would sell the clients kind of products, but actually there is no kind of demo plot here. So people actually don't know how good the product is. So a clear misalignment. Whereas in this area here, there are about 10 of these demo plots, but there is hardly any maize. And this is where the insight and actions part starts. So with this solution, I can tell you, your kind of resources are wrongly allocated. We can kind of be much more effective. And this is how, let's say, layers over layer can create more and more insights. And here we are quite flexible in kind of designing solutions to your needs. The next thing I want to show here is then the reporting part. So you can hover over individual kind of provinces, but we also have the ability to have a circle, rectangle, or individual shapes reporting. When you have clicked on one of these reports, and I have selected the region Mashonaland West, you will get an aggregated view of the business intelligence data here in a report you can download and pivot the way you want. But by year, you see here the amount of hectares grown. And you will see an interesting kind of number change from 16 to 17. And I will show you later the impact of weather to this here. But what is interesting to me is you can now say, okay, right, how much large fields do, or let's say large scale farming do we have in comparison to the total amount? And so you will see here 134,000 hectares of maize grown in 16, of which 11,000 were large, or 17, 34,000 large. And this is how you can intersect the data. And on the right-hand side, you will see the point of interest data. You will say here were 152 demo plots and 52 retail shops. And then here you can really drill down to individual districts, understand the potential, and then here you see a lot of misalignment and say, okay, let's move from these 42, 49 kind of demo plots. There are only 5 needed. We should rather put them here where the 8 are. So this is how you optimize. Coming to the next kind of feature, production estimates, which Molly also mentioned. So what we have done, and again, here ground truth data was needed, is how does a 2 ton hectare field look like? How does a 5 ton hectare field look like? And a 7 or 8 ton field look like? Once we had that calibration data, we can now do things. I can not only tell you where a crop is grown, so I can give you production estimates. So that means within the start of the season, let's say about 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, we need a certain height of the crop to kind of give some estimates. We can then tell this is the potential, with an uncertainty of the climate and the weather, we don't know, the production. And what we have done here, an experiment to the Zambian government, is to showcase a little bit what the inside part of that could be. Is we know that in this province there are 217,000 production metric tons production kind of estimated. We know that there are 2.8 million people living there, and there are some conversion rates for what typically time of staple food in terms of enshima or maize flour they need per person. So that means actually here there is in this province a theoretical food security issue. So 34,000 metric tons are missing. given the 50,000 hectares or 51,000 hectares of total maize kind of cultivated in this area. And then here is the Zambia view. There is a kind of also a shortage. Now, what you can do is, and if I click on the optimized fertilizer scheme, there was a study from the Zambian government on input of fertilizer. If it's loading, eventually here it comes up. One click too much, where they kind of analyze the average usage of fertilizer, the effect of that in terms of yield increase. And if I take all of that into effect, you will see a lot of kind of more provinces go green, including the whole of Zambia, where they can also shift. So in other words, we could not near real time, but well, maybe near real time address kind of food security issues or understand and give you kind of guidance or governments to do so. The next thing I want to show here in this toolkit is growing protocol. So assume you have a standard protocol how you grow maize, and there can be different for large farm types and smallholders. Herbicide fertilizer use in the number of weeks, plus the kind of dosage rates and the potential amount of input needed. So this large farm tile in Zambia typically spends, let's say, for maize, $80 a hectare. So if you convert that with the data again, I can kind of, from a business perspective, if I click on area share of wallet, I can say, right, here are the total amount if for all of the people who are growing maize, what's the business potential in this particular area? You can then compare this with your sales, and this gives you market share. So total market share potential plus your, and that again allows you to do some business optimization. And lastly, I mean, and again, I want to showcase a little bit how to inject more and more kind of data to gain more and more insights. So if I add weather into the equation, again, I zoom into Zimbabwe, you see the last month is visualized, but I can click on any point of the map. And then I get for this GPS coordinate, the amount of rainfall and how it's being distributed. And if I go back to 16 and 17, oh, my computer is very slow. I need to be careful. Okay, you roughly need 700 millimeters of rain to grow maize properly, also correctly distributed. And here you see the difference. In that 1 year, we just had 428 compared to 1100, and a complete different distribution at planting time, where there was hardly any rainfall. It always started later. Means a lot of fields who were planted actually dried out and died. So no production at all. That's why you see a lot of discrepancies. So in other words, at 6th grain, we can understand correlation of weather effects to production. And that was the quick demo on this one. Now let me go to the next demo. I need to look good in terms of time, I believe.
I think you're good.
Yep. Yeah, tell me off, Walid, if I need to speed up.
No, I mean, yeah, Pete will go at 12. Well,
Okay.
I think you're good. Yeah.
Okay. So next solution, more or less hot after the press. We are just building this as we speak with a client who is selling tractors in Brazil. So they have asked us, well, how can we identify potential new customers? So what you see here is a 3 to 5 year backdated analysis of fields. And the good news here is we have also the ability now to detect individual shapes automatically. So we know the fields, where they are, how big they are. Then we analyze the last couple of years in terms of performance. And this is a combination of classical NDVI, biomass, and a couple of other parameters. And then we can say to the client, hey, now here is a map, and this is a 100 by 100 kilometer example where I can zoom in. And at some a certain point, you will see, oh, my internet is really crazy. Yeah, it's really getting down to a individual kind of field level. And where we detected the boundaries, analyzed the last couple of years, and then we can tell, hey, this very dark fields, they are potential kind of well-managed fields. Now, the first thing you need to do is we have a customer, so where are the existing customers, but we also managed to connect this to the Brazilian cadastral kind of data set, which is to some extent publicly available. So these are the red boundaries. And here is then an example that you see this whole area is potentially, I mean, the cadastral area is sometimes questionable, but if you are looking for new customers, you're looking for, let's say, field size in that respect greater than 50 hectares, where the field conditions are very high. So here, that if it's you don't have a client here, here is a potential area where you can identify new clients. We have then an overlay of Farmers Point. You can click on one if it's then loading. And then there's also a database you can purchase where they give you kind of addresses and or at least names of these potential farmers. So imagine a scenario where you as a salesperson get tasked to find new clients. Here is a combination of remote sensing tools with kind of additional data sources, kind of where we build new insights. And then this is then also enhanced a little bit. So here's the same data, but in a reporting format. And what I managed to get is from the client is where do they have actually sold in this region already their kind of hardware. In this scenario, it's a high horsepower tractor. What's the total business potential? So we know how much hectare one of these machine can do. And then we have the machine aging even. So if they have between year and 5, 126 machine, which let's say are very old, at some point in time, you see the potential and say, hey, maybe these clients we can kind of sell, not upgrade. So again, this is how you can use remote sensing data and convert this into a business scenario. The next thing is a stress level management. So rather than saying how good have the fields performed in the last 3 to 5 years, we have analyzed if there were severe conditions like drought, which of the fields actually still performed reasonably well. And the hypothesis assumption here is this is our farmers who know how to know their business. They are outperforming the others. Maybe they have access to irrigation. We can also find that out. But they typically know how to deal with these kind of situations. E.g., these are potential customers. So if you're a kind of a bank who want to issue a loan, I would kind of issue a loan to the guys who are doing well-managed fields here, or the same with the kind of insurance companies, because these are your targets. Here you probably can decrease your risk of bad debts. Which brings me to the next feature here. For the existing clients where we know the shapes, we can on an almost daily basis, I mean, typically Sentinel flies over, let's say, every 3 days-ish. Yes, we cannot see through clouds, but we can then get down to say, per individual client, how are the individual fields performing? And this is, I mean, we have a very complex tool to monitor fields from an agronomy perspective, but this is call it a simplified version. I think I need to zoom in 2 more levels, where you very easily can see, come on, here we go, where you very easily can see for this client here, how are the fields performing. So green is good, very simple traffic light approach. Red is bad. And with that, an accountable person can trigger a visit and say, hey, we should look at these kind of fields. And this is kind of daily, or let's say nightly updated when we have new satellite data. You can actually click on one of the fields. And then here, if it's eventually loading, yes, you see a kind of, for this given seasonality, the current NDVI picture. So that would kind of give you a little bit more insight if you're interested in, say, in this upper right corner, we have an issue, for example. So when you want to prepare a visit. This is also available in a report here by client in this kind of province, and you see over and underperforming. And the last thing here as another overlay is we also have the ability for disease modeling, including a, let's say, 1 week forecast. So you see here the fields, that's the current kind of risk. And then I can get to, wait, I didn't want to zoom. Come on, internet. Here we go. So that's day 2. That was a bit too much, but you still get it. And here you get then day 6, and here you where the can see where a disease risk is potentially high, and then getting out of reactive into proactive mode. This is what this kind of toolkit is about. And then the last one, and then I'm going into Q&A, is data terminal. Here we go. So as I said earlier, we always will have the need for ground truth data. And we have kind of created no, it's not simple actually. We can get quite sophisticated with the logic in behind, but it is a tool which allows any person very simply capture the data we need. And by capturing data we need means depending on the project, and this could be free text, radio buttons, drop downs. I will show you that in a second. And very, very important to me, as we work in rural areas, this thing was supposed and is working offline. And here you see, I have given an example of a basmati rice. You will see incomplete, completed, and submitted. So these are the 3 status. So I can have started the survey but haven't finished it. Here I have answered all the questions and submitted with this green synchronize button. When I have network connectivity, I can push this over to the server. The way it looks on the web front end, the same as on the mobile phone. You see radio buttons here. You will see drop downs, checkboxes. We have the ability to capture GPS locations. There is the ability to have if this then that. So if you ask for yield, we can put in some logical kind of thresholds and saying it should be between whatever 2 tons a hectare and 10 tons a hectare, so that we can avoid typos, which increases the data quality. And this all of that is then kind of translated into a near kind of real-time dashboard or visualization. Here's an example of what we did in Zambia and Zimbabwe with the clients. 5 times during the season, we captured that, translated this also into business demand. And this really goes down to individual field level, if you like here. Okay, right. So again, there was one too much. My internet drives me crazy. Apologies for that. Give me a second. Well, here we are. One more. You will see the shape of the fields. Smallholder, emerging, professional. The yellow ones are monitored field. Here the same thing with the NDVI picture. You can click on any of the points, and you can get the farmer details plus the kind of the survey itself, what has been answered if you really want. But furthermore, coming again, really, really important for me. So what? So we have captured this data. What we have done here in this scenario is we
Mario,
have created, yeah,
just to say that you had 3 minutes, so if you can wrap up, that we
yeah,
can have a question. Thank you.
yeah.
Sorry.
That's actually the last one of the last things. Second last tab. Perfect. So again, we have converted that into a farmer productivity index. So how good are these farmers performing over the last years, current in the season? And this kind of could be used as a credit ranking score input where we can work together with you to kind of define what the credit ranking should look like. And all other sorts of slicing and dicing you can hear in terms of budget and fertilizer used. You can slice and dice here. And the last thing I want to show here is also maybe to your interest. We have access to a kind of an industry standard toolkit. It's called Cool Farm Tool, which is a very well-respected tool to convert behavior into carbon. And this was one of the projects we did with one client where we can then actually see how much total emissions, emission per hectare or emissions per ton of produce has been created depending on the data input we have created. And that was a combination of on-the-ground data and remote sensing data. Which brings me actually to the end. And then I can get over into Q&A. Walid.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you so much. So, please, for the audience, if you have any question, please share it with us in the Q&A and or in the chat. And if we didn't have the chance to answer them now, we will do it after the session of Pete. You have one question actually, just before Pete, go ahead and if you can in 1 minute.
Who were your primary clients? I mean, we have primary clients are kind of, well, we have everything from ag input to fertilizer companies to kind of big machinery companies. And also kind of the bigger clients are at the moment, I would say, governmental kind of setups where we kind of want to transform entire kind of countries. So it's a bit all over the place, but that's would be probably a good summary. Satellite data and climate data free. Yeah.
Yeah. Mario, I think we go ahead with Peter and then we
Yeah, we can
we can
also
answer
answer
the
that. We can answer
after.
that on the go. Yeah, yeah. I don't want to steal your time, Pete.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mario.